So I think we focus on the ones that are on the web that follow us, because there's like kind of a rumor in the room and people are talking, which is okay. That's the idea of this event, to network and to speak to each other. So I have the pleasure to welcome you today here. My name is Robert Hermann. I am the CEO of Germany Trade and Invest, which is a government entity that supports business in Germany as well as abroad. We do also focus on startups and financial investors. We try to support them doing their activities in Germany. And that is of interest today. We're strengthening the so-called hub initiative of the German government, where the German government decided to bring together in 12 hubs in Germany the ideas of clustering startups together with small and medium-sized companies. I think this is an opportunity that you could also see on the website. Please do not hesitate to get in touch with the colleagues that are here or that you can follow digitally. So please, I think I would prefer if you would present yourself, because as we had that before, it's easier that you say a few words about what you do and what your focus is in this regard here today.
Thank you, Robert.
Please.
Thank you. So my name is Miczaika. I'm an investor and with Auxxo. Auxxo invests primarily in startups which are co-founded by women. So we're looking for female participation in startups.
Great, thank you very much. Naoyoshi, please.
Yeah, my name is Naoyoshi Yoneyama. I'm managing director of the SBI Berlin here, and SBI is the Japanese purely online financial service provider. So we are the largest online bank as well as the brokerage firm. And we are traditionally strong on the investment business, particularly in venture capital business. And 2.5 years ago, we expanded to the German market, and I'm now here to support the German as well as the European startups in terms of the geo expansion to the Asian economy. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you very much. I think we had the panel before. We had a very broad topic, sustainability and very global topics. I think I would appreciate if we could bring it a little more down to what we're doing here today with Asia Berlin as well as here in Germany. To bring it down, I think it would be helpful if we would speak a little bit about the ecosystem for startups in Germany. Could you say a few words, the two of you, about what does it take to be successful in the ecosystem, and how would you assess the ecosystem for startups in Germany?
Okay, I'll go first. So to become a good, successful ecosystem, I think what you need is role models, and you need generations of startups to be able to build something like that. Basically, if someone is a successful entrepreneur, he will then hire many successful people who will also become successful and maybe also form their own businesses, et cetera, et cetera. Maybe when he has an exit, he'll become an investor, and that's these multi-generation startup building of startups is something that I would say defines a successful ecosystem, startup ecosystem. I think in Germany we're getting there slowly, and especially in the big hubs, be it Berlin, where we are now, Munich, Frankfurt, Hamburg. But I think there's still some progress to be done.
You're right, you're right. Naoyoshi, from an international perspective.
The first German company investment was roughly 5 years ago from SBI Holdings, and I don't name it the exact names, but it was 2 Berliner companies, and 2016 or 17, when it was not so the so-called solid startup ecosystem has not yet built in Berlin. From my perspective, But in the meantime, after 5 years, I see very, very solid as well as very promising ecosystem where the every different type of the actors, such as entrepreneur, investors, academia, as well as the politicians, all the elements are put in together in order to build this kind of the very new type of the industry. So for this capital city, so I see this kind of the very positive development since last 5 years. So which is very, very good for the, I think, from the foreign investors as well.
Speaking about Asia Berlin, that means we speak about international business. Where does the international startup and investor scene come into the ecosystem? So what is the benefit of having international actors in a German ecosystem? Gesa.
Well, especially if you're talking about the investor side, having capital here, and if you're talking about the resources, having innovative ideas will help not only the startup scene, but then later on the economy as a whole. So I think it should always be an issue that we should make our issue to bring a lot of capital, knowledge, innovation potential into the economy to be able to further grow. As we can see just recently from Zalando, HelloFresh, Delivery Hero have become part of the DAX, and others have stepped down, like Lufthansa and ThyssenKrupp, and that's possible because there was capital, because there were innovative ideas, and that's where I see the potential.
Maybe you can elaborate a little bit on the capital perspective. Do we have enough financing for every round in Germany already? Do we need the capital for the first, second, third? Where's the need?
Well, we have a very, very big need in the growth phase. So there's lots of international investors coming into Germany, but there's still, I would say, the growth phase is the one where we have just a gap which should be filled, and where I hope not only investors from abroad, but also Germany itself will be able to bridge this gap.
Naoyoshi, you started with your investment activity in Germany. From your perspective, how do you see your role in the scene that you have as an international actor?
Yeah, so if I look back at my roughly 3 years here in Berlin to conduct the venture capital business, I see the kind of, the gap in terms of the business management. So I mean the gap between the Asian philosophy and the European entrepreneurship. So I see this kind of the still difference, but my mission from my point of view is to fill in this gap with foreign investor, foreign capital. So I mean the Japanese capital, in order to achieve the bridging function between the European startups and the Asian economy. So in bridging function means that basically we support these companies into expanding the Asian economy. So through our network, so that's one of the largest or biggest added value to be here in Berlin.
One of the last business trips that I made right before Corona was to Singapore, and the goal has been to approach in Singaporean investors, funds that could invest in Germany, in companies in Germany. And we wanted to try to speak to, or we did speak to Temasek and GIC, yes, but also to smaller funds. The thing that they mentioned, the hurdle that they mentioned is they couldn't see, and we did speak about that right before the panel. They couldn't properly understand whether it's worth yet to invest in Germany, because have we proven already that Germany is a startup location, and is this attractive enough for Asian or foreign money, and how do they assess that? And from their perspective, it has been challenging to understand what it means to be in Germany or in Europe, let's say, with regards to the perspectives that they could have and see for their investment. So how would you see, where are we? That's 2 years ago. So have we made further steps towards a sustainable, let's say sustainable in terms of long-lasting, strong startup scene? Gesa.
Well, I think the two examples that I mentioned earlier of startup companies who have become part of the DAX is a really good example of that we have reached this point in Germany, and that also not only that, we can see lots of Asian investors investing into German and European companies, be it Naoyoshi with SBI or SoftBank investments into SoRare or Merantix or whatever. I mean, there's a lot coming in here, and I think that shows that the ecosystem is actually mature enough to get these kind of capital into the country.
Yeah, but what would be the wish from your perspective if you could ask a bunch of investors? What would you tell them? What should they do here? Why should they be here? What is it that you would offer, we offer as German ecosystem? So what in Europe, part of the ecosystem. So what is your recommendation to those actors?
Well, I think investors only have a specific lever, and this lever is capital. And this lever is bringing in ideas that they see somewhere else, and networks. And as, for example, SBI is doing, and helping companies here to go into the Asian market, I would also wish for Asian investors to do the same, but also to bring knowledge that they have through Asian companies. I mean, it's so unique things that are happening in Asia. For example, WeChat has this super app, and there's nothing comparable to that in Europe and in Germany, and there's a lot of know-how to be gotten from there, which we can use here, and that's my hope. Bringing that know-how, bringing that capital, and the knowledge transfer from Asia to Europe.
From the hubs in Singapore and some, yeah. Okay. Interesting. I think this could be very interesting to develop those linkages between the hubs in the other Asian centers for smart startups. Naoyoshi, maybe you can say a few words about the challenges that you faced starting your activity here, because I think everyone should know. Yes, you mentioned that different cultures. So, what is the start, and what makes it, or what is your experience? Has been your experience starting your activities here?
Yeah. The reason why, first of all, the reason why we expand to the Berlin 3 years ago was quite simple. That we invested a couple of the Berliner startups, and we are strategical investor, meaning that we do not pursue purely for the return. We are quite keen on how to develop the portfolio company in a successful way, especially as I mentioned, that the support of their geo expansion. And that's why we couldn't, from a geographical reason, we couldn't, hands-on support from Japan. That's why physically we expand to here in Berlin. And in the meantime, we supported the capital from financially the couple of the German startups, and we are still taking care of these companies quite honestly. But I feel kind of I think this is a cultural difference, I would say, but for me, it's a little bit pity that I think this is one of the challenging, or one of the elements which maybe will be overcome in the next 5 years. So I think for Asian ecosystem, startup ecosystem, is investor and entrepreneur founders the employee of the startup, they are all the kind of that. They are feeling kind of the family atmosphere. But here is a little bit. I see a little bit psychological difference, psychological distance between the investor and entrepreneur or founders. I think that is a little bit pity. Because from Asian perspective, Asian investors' perspective, I think for Asian investors, they need this kind of good relationship between the founders and the investors. So without this kind of the good relationship or warmful relationship, I think it's difficult for to gain the investors from Asia or other neighboring countries. But that's my personal opinion. But I see a couple of the case in my last 3 years. So I think this is a really purely cultural difference. But probably we could correct this kind of in a constructive way. So that's one of the current mission or my assignment by myself, yeah. But all in all, I think it's very good. I see very, very good collaboration between the European startups and the Asian. At least SBI point of view, I see a very good collaboration so far, yeah.
Gesa, Naoyoshi mentioned the gap between investors and startup, from his perspective at least, from an Asian perspective. Do you see that similar? Because you're an investor, so I think you're sailing the same boat. So once you invested, you are in the same idea and you have the same enthusiasm as the startup has. So what is your thought on?
Well, I think I'm not the standard in this because I believe that I invest a little bit different than the typical investor. I'm a mother, and for me, what Naoyoshi was saying, family is something which is really important to me, and investing in a company, if we're going to be going on this journey for the next 10 years or so, it's really important to have this kind of relationship, to trust each other, to know that we're not opponents, we're not on different sides, we're completely on the same side. And if challenges come up, then we have to tackle them together, even if these challenges are difficult for the relationship that you have. But I think that Naoyoshi, the point that he brought up, I think it's often the case that investors invest and just want to maximize their returns, which is completely fine. But I think there might be a mismatch if that's the approach that you take and you don't have this family approach, what he was mentioning, that you can't bring all of your knowledge, you can't bring all of the potential out of or in the company if you always see sides. And that's why I think it would be better if everyone would invest in that familiar and integrative way.
Speaking about being a special investor, you mentioned that in your introduction. You have a special approach with regards to female entrepreneurship. Maybe you can say a few words about that, because I think the entrepreneurship scene is still a more male scene. Maybe you have better numbers than I have. I think it's relevant to focus on female investments, but you are the expert in that with regards to what you do, what you focus on. Maybe you can say a few words about that, because that's probably a topic that is also of interest, as we see probably a similar situation in other markets, also in Asia.
Yeah, definitely. In many markets, we have the same situation. So maybe I can start by saying some numbers. I'm also in the board of the German Startup Association, and last year, for the third consecutive year, they released the female monitor, the Female Founders Monitor. And we only had 15.7% female founders in Germany, which is a number I would say it's too low, but it's 15.7, and it's been stagnating since years. But looking at the investor side of things, you notice that there's only 3% female partners in investment companies in Germany, and that's why most of the capital actually goes to all male teams. Right now, it's over 90%, 90% of capital in venture capital going to all male teams. And by looking at this, for us, it was just a gap that no one was looking at, and which bears a huge potential. Even if you look at the numbers, there's many studies that show that female founders are very successful, that they do deliver high return on investments, that they do have lower write-offs and take less time to exit, et cetera, et cetera. And if no one's looking there, then we thought, that's our approach. Why don't we go in there and finance those great female founders and help them build huge companies, and maybe also help a little bit to make this ecosystem also from the investor side a little bit more diverse than it is today. And diversity, it's not only the gender which is important. I think if we want to really get all the value add that we have in this country, we need to have different, just diversity in thought, diversity in experience. We need all this diversity on the table to be able to really garner those innovations and to make them big and to scale them. That's why our approach is just female, but there's many, many others to look into.
Naoyoshi, do you have a special focus on this topic as well? Do you consider teams differently?
No, I'm 100% agree with Gesa told us. So in terms of our team, so our SBI Everin teams, I am the only person as a male, so that the rest of the team member is a female. So I personally, I don't differentiate any, from this perspective, I don't see any kind of discrimination who is running on the company. So it doesn't matter for me. The more it's again, it's a really pity that the people from male or female, so just differentiated by the sex. I think this is quite almost ridiculous to stand on the different starting point. So from the just launching their business, they have a huge passion, huge motivation, huge spirit, company spirit. So judging from this aspect, I think it's almost bring nothing. So, but one thing is, Gesa mentioned that diversity. So as I mentioned, that I'm taking care of the couple of German startups. One of them is considering the geo-expansion to Asia, but they are quite so. I mean, in terms of diversity, they are still there lack of the international talent. So they are a little bit, lack of the human capital from the overseas, or talent, or from technology guys from the let's say the India or other countries. So I think that is a quite huge loss, huge negative point, especially from the investor perspective, but also it's quite difficult to compete in the international market with this kind of the setup. So I advised, especially those companies, to internationalize more internally, so it's not externally. So that's the first assignment, a task to rebuild their company infrastructure. Otherwise, nobody can compete with other tech giants in the world. So that's my philosophy of the diversity.
That also as recruiting international talents as an approach to market products on an international basis, right? So if you have the talents from other nations, you have the understanding of those markets. You learn better what it means to be in another market, and you have the employees and the talents in your organization that helps you to strengthen the product to internationalize. A very, very, very relevant topic, right? Speaking about sectors, we didn't speak about sectors. So, what are the relevant sectors for investments and activities in the startup ecosystem in Germany? Is there one sector, or is this a broad scene? Is this like everything? What is it? 19 unicorns that we have. It's like a little broad, but are there special sectors that Germany is known for, or is it like good ideas are everywhere in every sector?
Well, I think there it's also good to look back in history. So the German startup ecosystem evolved from very e-commerce heavy, marketplaces heavy, to more of software as a service, B2B enterprise, etc. That's like what's being focused for the past couple of years, fintech, etc. And I'm seeing another evolvement happening now, which is a lot into the area of also deep tech and sustainability, impact topics, etc., etc. I think we have startups in almost every area, but right now, originally we started a lot, as I said, from e-commerce and marketplaces. I would say right now it's very heavy on software as a service, B2B, those types of topics, but it's evolving. So I think I'm looking forward to seeing what's going to happen next.
And you yourself, you do focus on the good business opportunity and not on the technology?
Yeah, we're sector agnostic because there's not that many women who do found businesses and even less who get venture capital funding. We had to go as broad as possible, so we invest Europe-wide and sector agnostic.
Naoyoshi, you are in different stages of investments. Do you have an industry sector where you focus on, or is it similar, the business opportunity is the benefit of it?
So last year we launched our first European fund, which is focusing on the deep tech area. The keyword of this fund is the Industry 4.0. Which is actually one of the main reasons why we expand to Germany. Is not other, UK or France. That's our main reason. Because from a macroeconomic perspective, Germany is still in leading countries in terms of the manufacturing industry as well as the automotive industry in the continental Europe. So there's no choice to if we run our fund here in Germany, not to focus on the deep tech area, which is directly influence on the digitalization of the automotive industry as well as the manufacturing industry. So because the Japan and Germany has a common future in terms of the industry development. If you look back at the past. So in this sense, we had a lot of advantages to invest financially support this area. So consequently, probably back to this good technology export into the Japanese market. That was our kind of the strategy at that time. So, but so far we are quite happy to see the Berlin is rather B2B, B2C enterprise is heavy, but if you look at the south of Germany or a little bit western side, we can see a lot of opportunity to be born this kind of the promising companies in this area. Yeah.
If you have, you've spoken about the technologies, and it's obviously everything in digitalization. Most of that, at least. Is there, on the other hand, a certain Asian market that is of more relevance for internationalization in terms of linking a region to another region? Is there, with regards to talent, with regards to sectors, where is there one basket that we would focus on, or is it depending on the product, depending then on the size of the market? Is there one beneficial market that you would focus on? Gesa?
I think Naoyoshi would be able to answer this a lot better than me, but I think far too little in general. Right now, if I see the startups in Germany, what they do is they start with Germany, maybe they go into the big hubs in Europe, and then they go to the US right away. And I don't see a lot of this going into Asian economies. And I mean, it's obvious that they are very, very promising and exciting economies. For me, I mean, China is one that's always top of mind, just because of those many huge companies that are out there. But likewise with Korea, Japan, India, Indonesia. I couldn't pinpoint it to one. I'm sure Naoyoshi will be able to answer this question a lot better.
I hope that many Asian investors is joining to the ecosystem, Berlin ecosystem in the next 2-3 years. So like us. So as long as I know the SBI is quite a few investors which are really residential inhabited here in Berlin. But I think it's the of course, the Asian market is one of the still growth center around the world. So meaning that there are a lot of opportunity. On the other hand, for European startups, there are a lot of pain points or a lot of hurdles to overcome. So that's why we are now here. To ease this kind of the negative point of the Asian economy. So I mentioned at the beginning that we are now here to fill in the gap between the psychological difficulty of the which the European generally the people think about the Asian continent or Asian countries. We would like to not correct, but we would like to change this kind of the psychological difference between regarding the difficulty, psychological difficulty. So. But anyway, I understand that if you choose, so which one you choose, expand to the US or Asia. So of course, the people, almost all the people choose the US because there's less difficult, less hurdle to enter into the new market. But I would like to also correct this kind of the mindset. That's my second mission. Yeah.
I would like also to include the audience. In case there is a question, please raise your hand, and I give you my microphone. Please. Even though it's not foreseen, but I do it.
Yes, hello. My name is Christian. I have a question to both of you. Recently, Germany has significantly changed its foreign investment rules, and basically now everything which is really interesting in the German economy is subject to foreign direct investment control. So how do you think that the startup scene will thrive under these conditions, and do you have a point of view in this respect?
I don't know, is basically the answer. We will have to see how it progresses. And I think what the government should do is, in my opinion, is to make to tear down all the barriers, especially with regards to if we're looking at the startup scene, we need a lot. We need to see startups top of mind of the politicians, and we need startups to be one of the first things that people talk about. And if you have that, then you will also be able to make it easier for startups to hire from abroad, et cetera, et cetera. But if you're saying specifically, how will this impact the startup scene? We will have to wait and see. I don't know if Naoyoshi maybe has a better answer.
Yeah, I would say that it is obvious that the German startups ecosystem is getting more attention from the overseas, which is of course a very good signal for all the participants in this ecosystem. What I think I'm missing is of course the capital from especially from the overseas. And capital means not only the building capital, but also the growth capital. And this is really hard to acquire from the everywhere. But that's why many of the startups is thinking about go abroad. So at least building a branch in the U.S. or other China, or where it is more easy to find the money. So I think that is one of the pity phenomena for this kind of for the European continent. So I think that is one of the aspect which we need to make put a more emphasis or put a more effort to avoid this kind of the bad impact, bad effect.
Yes, here's another question. There's a microphone coming.
So thank you very much. So as we are creating an Asia Berlin Investors Club, so we are very interested in to know your interest of intercontinental co-investments. So you're both investors, and I know that SBI has already partnered with Redstone, that they have co-investments with Merantix, so they are already one of the examples for us. But also, is it for you interesting to have a co-investment with, so to say, a Chinese, a Singaporean, or a Japanese VC or angel to do ventures, maybe also in Asia? Is that interesting for you?
Well, it is very interesting to partner with Asian investors and do co-investments with them, definitely. But we are confined to Europe as an investment center, which means that the headquarters needs to be in Europe. But it doesn't mean that the business has to be in Europe. So we're open to investments with businesses anywhere in Asia, and definitely looking for co-investors from Asia. Yes.
Okay. Is there another question? I would also have the question a little bit related to also the aspects that we had right before. If we deal with activities outside of Europe, we have to deal with totally different intellectual property situations. And if you have companies, Naoyoshi, you mentioned that you support your investments in doing business abroad in Asia, where you also have offices to support them with their activities in these nations. How do these companies and how do you together deal with the intellectual property situation? Is this a difficulty, or is this, let's say, kind of business as usual that the companies anyway have to handle?
I would say it's not easy because first of all, if you would like to expand to conduct a geo expansion, you really put a great effort to conduct market research, market analysis. That is one of the first hurdle to overcome, because Asian economy is not not easy to put all the relevant actors to make it happen, to really to be successful for the entrepreneur. So that's one of my mission, to not only give the network, our existing network, provide our existing network, but also to connect the whole economy, whole pipeline, our channels, which we have possess. That is the second hurdle to put forward for the sake of the European startups. So in all, it is not easy. But so in this sense, it's not business as usual. But if we do not this kind of our effort, we are just investor, just purely returning acquiring investor, which is not our stance. So we are trying too hard to make it happen. So therefore, we would like to need the full commitment toward the geo expansion into the Asian economy, so that we are quite heavily taxed if we decided to go into the Asian market. So that's our for my way of work in terms of the helping startups in here.
Gesa, you are familiar with the ecosystem. You're part of the Startup Association, and you're very active already for years now in the system. How easy is it to be part of this family in Germany if you come from outside of Germany? Is this kind of a welcome situation? It's a family, and anyway, if you're innovative, if you're an entrepreneur, if you're a startup, if you're an investor, you're welcome, or is this a closed situation? So where is it somewhere in between those two edges?
Well, I think it's you're welcome, but it takes some time and networking to really have a foot in the door. And I think the German ecosystem in general is open for many international investors and startup founders, and any international aspects that bring also new information, new knowledge into the whole ecosystem. But if we're talking about like fighting over specific deals or trying to open networks, it's work. It's still work, and even for me, I'm German, and but I'm not the typical investor, as I said. So 97% are male, and many come from the same schools. So for me, it was also work, but it's rewarding. So I would recommend everyone to actually take the time to network and dig deep into that. Naoyoshi has a lot more experience of the last 5 years how to do this. Maybe he can give us some tips afterwards. For me, the tips that I can give is to go to those events, talk to the people, bring people together, bring new ideas in, and then you're at a certain point you'll notice that the door has opened. Yeah. I mean, the door is open, but it's still a way to go to get in.
It's still a business where you compete upon the opportunities, right? Right. I think we're going to come to an end. In case there's no further question here, there's one question. Do we still have the microphone? Thank you very much.
Hi. I'm Suwon from Cultural Hamburg, which promotes the economic collaboration between Korea and Germany. And I have a question for Gesa. You're saying that the portfolio, your investment portfolio is centered in Europe. And I was wondering that what could be the difficulties for you to invest in Asian companies or startups, and what could be done better for them to invest more companies in Asia?
Well, for us, it's we're 3 women handling the startups, and it's just really difficult for us to go beyond Europe because we have to help these startups. We have to, be there, and we're only 3 people, so it's really difficult to split it up. And that's why at a certain point, you just have to say this is the focus, and you can't do more. I think in the future, I'm really hoping that we will be able to grow and bring in more people, and then we will definitely also expand our geographical focus. But for the meantime, it's just not doable for us as Auxxo, because we're just a small team with not a lot of capital, and but it's a start. I mean, that's why I'm saying it's. I was not an investor before 2018, and for me, it was a long way to get where I am now in this investment scene. But you have to make slight improvements and become bigger and bigger with time. You can't start and say, I'm gonna, I have no investment experience whatsoever, but now I'm gonna deploy 300 million euros. That's just not possible. And I think that's it. I think it's bringing the big companies. If you they will expand into many other geographies, but for us, it's just a matter of capacity.
Thank you. I think there's no further question. Both of you, thank you very much for the brief fireside chat that we had. It's been a pleasure to learn, to understand, and I hope everyone, also the audience here as well as online, got some ideas about what it means, interconnection between Asia and Germany. And as you mentioned, Gesa, use these opportunities to interconnect, to speak to each other, to learn. And as soon as we're getting rid of this corona or the situation, the hurdles that we have at least, we're not getting rid of corona, but the hurdles that we have, as soon as we overcome them, then I think it's much easier to come together again and speak to each other and exchange views. And I think this is very, very relevant for this business and as well as for all the other businesses. So thank you very much. It's been a pleasure. And I think there should be an applause for the 2 that answered all the questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.